Um, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ebenezer Demesa, and I'm a training coordinator at the Temple Small Business Development Center. We are glad to have all of you here today. The Temple SBDC helps small businesses start and grow, and we do this through our no-cost consulting, webinars such as this, and other training programs. We are proud to be part of a nationally accredited network of SBDCs with over 1,000 centers across the US. You have joined us today for our webinar dubbed Introduction to AI for Your Small Business. A follow-up email will automatically be sent to all attendees within the next 2 business days with the materials to be discussed today. All attendees are currently muted. However, we encourage you to post any questions and queries you have in the Q&A chat box, which will be reviewed by the instructor and then answers will be provided to accordingly. I'll now turn over the floor to Isabel to go on with the presentation for today. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ebenezer. All right, so we are here to talk about AI today. We are still a couple minutes ahead of the hour, so I'm going to say let's hold off on getting started just for a minute or two to give folks a chance to join us. We are numerous today, so registration, at last I checked, was in the mid 200s. So this has been changed to be a listen-only meeting. Just to minimize the background noise. So as you've heard, we still welcome your questions, your comments, your networking in the chat. I love an active Zoom chat. But we are going to get started in just a minute to give folks a chance to trickle in. If it's been a minute since you were in a Zoom call, congratulations, first of all. And here's the chat. Sarah has started us off. I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A function. So if you have specific questions related to the content that you want to make sure I get to, drop those in the Q&A. That's also helpful because in the recording, you'll be able to kind of jump to those questions and the answer, which is awesome. Glad to see that. Awesome. If you have just comments that you want to share, chat about what's being presented, the chat is a great place to do that. Save the question and answer for specific questions about the content as we move along. But bear in mind, we are, 55 folks here in the room who want to learn about AI and small business. So if you have a customer target that includes anybody in that category, this is a great opportunity to introduce yourself, introduce your business in the chat. Don't be afraid to drop, a website, an email address, make a connection. It's the middle of February. It's icy on the outside still, but that doesn't mean you can't still get some good networking in. So my clock says noon, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. So as you've heard, we are here today to talk about to give it just a brief introduction to AI for your small business. My name is Isabel Chrome. I am I'm our associate director here at the Temple Small Business Development Center. I'm also a consultant here with us. The Temple Small Business Development Center is very happy to be part of a nationwide network of accredited small business development centers, and happy to be part of a statewide network of SBDCs as well. Our key partners include the U.S. Small Business Association, the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, and of course, our fabulous Temple University hosts. So a little bit about the Pennsylvania SBDC network, and this is true across the country. If you're joining us from outside of PA, every zip code in the U.S. is served by a small business development center. If you're here in Montgomery or Philadelphia counties in Southeast PA, we're your SBDC. But if not, here's a little map to help you figure out who's your best contact. The thing we're best known for at the SBDC in SBDC world is our small business consulting. That's what I came to the SBDC to do. I also am now our associate director. Here are some examples of ways that our small business consulting can support you in a one-on-one setting at no cost. The first step you've already taken is signing up in our portal. If you have not yet spoken with one of our consultants, the follow-up email that you'll receive for this webinar will include a link to schedule an initial, just quick 15-minute intro call with one of our consultants. Oh, hi, Marla. Good to see you too. And What we'll do in that initial call is just get us a quick overview of what's going on in your business, what your needs are, and where we can assist. And from there, we'll talk about some next steps, get you connected with the right consultant for you, and get right to work. If you've already connected with one of our consultants and it's been a minute, don't be afraid to reach back out. We always love to hear from our clients. Question in the chat, will presentation be sent in email? Absolutely. You will get a copy of the slide deck for sure. Um, of course, we don't just do one-on-one consulting. We also do webinars like this one. So some of our favorites coming up, we've got a marketing on a budget class coming up next week. I'm very excited about. It's going to be led by our fabulous marketing specialist. We also, of course, are running our First Steps series, which is a monthly two-part series. If any of you are early stage business owners, idea stage, planning stage in your first year of business, I encourage you to consider the First Steps series where we talk really intensively about business planning and those first steps involved in launching your operations. We're also going to be having a working capital webinar on March 18th. That's actually going to be a hybrid. So we'll have an in-person session on Temple's campus as well as a virtual broadcast at the same time. And then we'll be running our IP 101 session on March 25th. And that same day starting our Boost class, which if you have not heard about it yet, is going to be a fabulous 12-week class for businesses in their first year of operations. It's called Business Owner Operations and Scaling Training. So we're going to be talking about all things growing your business, how to find your footing in a new business, how to prepare your operations to scale, including all kinds of topics. Very excited about that. Was just talking about the curriculum this morning, and it's shaping up beautifully. Can't wait to get that started. We do have an application process for that class. So if you are interested, check our calendar, check our newsletter for the application link to apply, or reach out to our main office email at sbdc@temple.edu. We'll be happy to share the application link for that. And we're doing a fabulous market research webinar at the end of March on the 31st. So just a couple of the upcoming webinars I'm very excited about. And now we'll get started. If you want to check out our events calendar, you can do so at our website, pasbdc.org/temple. And you can also take a look at webinars offered by other SBDCs across the state. Lots of really interesting content. So that's a little bit about us. I've been talking at you for a few minutes here. Who am I? This is my somewhat outdated headshot and a little bio for who I am and what I do. I love my work. That's who I am. If you have any questions about who we are at the SBDC, what we do, feel free to put them in the chat or just to reach out to us at sbdc@temple.edu. Now let's get into the good stuff. So we're here to talk about AI for your small business. What I'd like to accomplish today with all 100 of you, which is wonderful, is to get us all on the same page with just a basic understanding of what powers generative AI. I'm not going to give you too much inside baseball, in terms of the science, the technology behind it. But I think knowing a little bit about how it works shapes how we use it. We're also going to think about risks around AI usage and how to best manage them. And then the last thing that we're going to do today is ideally leave with at least one viable use case for your small business or your work. So in the interest of getting started with that, I'm curious, I'm going to run two polls. I'd love to start with, are you in business? Meaning, are you operational? You've got your licenses, you've got your legal structure, and you've started to engage customers. No wrong answer here. The topic will not be super different, but I'd like to know who's in the room. If you are not a business owner, if you're here just to learn more about this topic, feel free to answer not yet, still planning, because you never know what ideas might strike while you're in the room here. So thank you for that. I see a hand raised. If you wouldn't mind, put that question in or comment into the chat or the Q&A function. Okay, so we've got most of you participating. Leave this up for another minute, but this is about what I was expecting in terms of the split. So thank you for participating in that poll. I have one more poll for you. If you're curious, most people in the room, about half the people in the room are already in business. And then a nice mix of some folks that are in process. So that's good to know. Next, I'm going to ask about your familiarity with AI. Again, no wrong answer here, but I'm really curious about your personal and business familiarity with AI tools. And I don't use them yet is an absolutely fine response. And really any of the others are. I see a couple of you have self-identified as power users. Welcome. So glad to have you. If you have thoughts and comments about the way I'm answering questions, or if you have more to say, Please do feel free to share that expertise and your perspective. Always, always helpful to have you all in the room when we're talking about AI. Use the chat if you need to for any of that. If you want to add a little detail, an anecdote from your own experience, any of that is very welcome. Um, and I have fact checked my presentation fairly thoroughly. If I'm getting anything wrong, of course, please tell me. And that goes for all of you. I really welcome participation, questions, comments. If I'm speaking too quickly, if I use a phrase you're not familiar with, if you want me to give a longer explanation and an answer, I just encourage you, let me know either in the Q&A function or the chat. But yeah, good to see. Okay, so we are going to share a recording and a presentation. Yes, for this webinar. Yes. All right, so I'm going to wrap this poll. If you're curious who else is in the room, this one you might be interested to see. We've got a really nice split here. Most of you are living, I guess the plurality of you are living here in this. I use AI occasionally for specific tasks space, which is a very fair place to be as a busy business owner. But I'm hoping even those of you who are already using AI will walk away with some fresh ideas for how it could be useful in your business, or some thoughts on how to use it more effectively for the tasks that you're already leveraging AI for. All right. So that's all the polls I'm going to run. I won't keep you all too busy with doing polls, but any questions so far on what we're trying to do, our objectives, before we get right into it? All right, awesome. So back to the topic at hand. Before we get too deep in this, why should you care? This is a little bit of a joke, but I do want to make the case for why this topic matters. I hopefully don't need to make this case too hard. You've already shown up for a webinar called Intro to AI for Your Small Business, but just to, you know, talk about the importance of it a little bit by the numbers. So I pulled these numbers in the past 2 weeks. Most of these statistics are from November 2025 or December 2025, so not within the last 4 months, but the 98% of small businesses that were surveyed in a Deloitte survey, 98% of small businesses are currently using AI-enabled tools. 40% of small businesses are using generative AI, which is a slight distinction that I'll talk about it in a slide or two. 91% of small business owners surveyed believe that AI will fuel future growth. For employees who use AI, they are reporting 3 times revenue growth, 2 times wage growth, and 66% faster skill evolution, and are crediting those results to their AI usage. Small business owners are reporting, and this is challenging to calculate, but we did see this figure reported about a 3 times return on investment on every dollar invested in generative AI. Now that's across Fortune 500 companies and not just small businesses. That's across all. It's a business owner survey that was done last fall. However, it's not all sunshine and roses. You may have seen a report late last year that 70 to 85% of AI initiatives failed to meet expected outcomes. 42% of companies abandoned most AI initiatives in 2025 compared to 17% in 2024. And 77% of businesses expressed concern around AI hallucinations. And I'll talk about what hallucinations are in a moment as we get into what AI is and how it works. But there are real concerns there. So these statistics between these two slides show rapid adoption of AI tools, but they also show, I hope, that success using those tools and leverage them for business growth requires thoughtful implementation, not just jumping on a bandwagon. So hopefully today in our conversation around risks and ethical concerns, we'll give you some food for thought around how to best utilize this emerging technology in your own businesses without running into this experience that the majority of people have of AI initiatives failing to meet expected outcomes. So whether that comes in, identifying better use cases to focus those AI initiatives on, setting more realistic expectations for outcomes, or implementing them more successfully, hopefully we can do a little bit better than these numbers show in your own businesses. Couple of quotes from small business owners who were surveyed. This is from a Google AI training that was done in early 2025. Small business owners report that AI potentially offers shortcuts that are easy to yield quick productivity wins, like planning staff schedules, reducing food wastage in a small restaurant. But these are also relatively inexpensive and easy to enact. So these shortcut tasks are kind of the low-hanging fruit for AI implementation. A gift shop owner in the UK said, I've always said that I needed an extra me working on the business, and AI is kind of like a mini me that I can get to sort of start me off and just make things a little bit easier. So now that you've heard all the numbers on why this matters, I'm going to give you a brief demo of how I've used this, and I've seen small business owners using it. And I'm going to do just a really quick one. So could somebody, and I'm going to switch over to my ChatGPT window. Could somebody give me a description of your small business? Just what you do in your business. Doesn't have to be, super long one, but just somebody put in the chat, what does your business do? Okay. Refillery. Ooh, I love that one. Food truck, custom cake bakers, M&A. Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna take one of these. And basically I'm gonna take the one I most recently saw. Okay, so I'm gonna take government contracting. All right, so let's say I am a government contractor. And I want to and I want to think about what the best ways to use AI in my business might be. I might open up a ChatGPT window and say, I run um, um, a business selling products and services to local and state government agencies. What are the top 10 use cases for AI in my small business? Let's see what it says. RFP and RFQ analysis, summarizing RFPs, extracting deadlines, mandatory requirements, storing criteria. So notice I'm not asking AI to actually create any work for me, to create any content for me, or to do any work for me. I'm just asking it to give me some ideas on how ChatGPT generative AI could be helpful for me. Proposal drafting, compliance and responsiveness checks, pricing and scope clarification support, contract and amendment review on a first pass. Note that you will still want a lawyer involved on the big stuff. So some interesting ideas here. Let me, and then let's say I wanted to actually have it analyze an RFP for me. I might say analyze the attached RFP and my own capabilities statement, highlight, uh, um, provide an assessment of the fit of this opportunity as well as relevant deadlines and evaluation criteria. And then I would just upload by clicking add files, the RFP and the capability and my own capability statement. This is the paid version. There is a free version of ChatGPT, but just to show you kind of what that prompt might look like. Let's say different idea. Let's say I run a used bookstore in Philadelphia, draft a marketing calendar for my next 3 months. Now I'm going to ask it to actually provide something for me. I'm going to say, give me some content. Okay. So here it's giving me, because I said the next 3 months, it's starting in February. It's giving me some themes, what to do in each of the weeks in that calendar, an email newsletter. I didn't now, if I told it, here's the channels I'm active on. If I gave it more detail on my prompt, I would get better results. This is a theme you'll hear me repeat, but just as a starting point, it's giving me some ideas for things to post, where to post them, collaborations with nearby businesses, and promotions both in store and online. And same thing for March, some themes, a breakdown by week. Now, if I wanted something different, I could ask for something different, right? But just to show you kind of how quick this was to provide something. So this is ChatGPT. And I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm going to go back to my slides. We'll do more of a demo later on, I promise. But just wanted to, I always think it's helpful to start off with a little bit of a show so you see what we're talking about as we talk about, as we continue the conversation around the rest of these tools. Okay, and we're making decent time. So how does this work? You just saw me type in, a couple of sentences and get pages of content back, right? So how does this all work? Well, so I'm going to give you a very brief cliff notes into AI and generative AI and how we got here. And I want to start with what generative AI is not. So it is not HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Anybody get that reference, or am I too old for this room? Nobody's going to keep you from opening those pod bay doors. We are not yet in a world where AI is making decisions for us or has power over us. Nor is generative AI an entity that has feelings, knowledge, or common sense, right? It doesn't, no matter how well trained these AI tools are, they do not know things in the way that people know things. They do not have feelings. We are not yet at a point where there is, sentience involved. It's also not magic, and it's not free of cost. There are complicated equations going on behind every letter of text, every piece of text that an AI large language model generates. So what is it then, right? So AI is the science of creating machines capable of performing tasks that would typically require human intelligence. The concept actually dates back to the 1950s, arguably earlier, if you're an Ada Lovelace fan, but certainly the 50s. Early AI relied on rule-based systems where every scenario and response were mapped out, and machine learning evolved began to come onto the scene in the 80s with the goal of helping computers learn from data rather than relying on pre-programmed rules. Instead of explicitly telling a machine how to recognize patterns, machine learning algorithms are trained on large data sets and develop their own methods for identifying trends or making predictions. They are still, this shift was revolutionary. This enabled systems to improve over time, to adapt to new information, and to expand beyond the responses that could be programmed in as I ask you what color the sky is, you say blue, kind of level of programming detail. And applications that came out of machine learning are applications that we've used every day, even before, ChatGPT launched. Things like spam filters rely on machine learning, recommendation engines in all of our entertainment platforms rely on machine learning algorithms. Even speech recognition, all of this is possible thanks to machine learning. There was a major breakthrough in machine learning with the development of neural networks. Neural networks, and that's that little depiction I've drawn here on the slide, are layers, are algorithms that are inspired by the structure of the human brain. So they consist of layers of interconnected nodes or neurons that process information by mimicking how neurons in our brains communicate. Neural networks were originally conceptualized in the early days of AI back in the mid-century, but they didn't gain significant traction until the last 20 years because we didn't have the computing power and the data availability to allow for their widespread use. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning that builds on neural networks by using many layers to analyze complex data. It is deep learning that makes advancements like image recognition, natural language processing, and every LLM possible. Generative AI is the kind of the new frontier in AI and involves creating or generating new content, text, images, music, video, based on patterns learned from existing data. So generative AI is, basically a supercharged autocomplete. They come pre-trained. I keep saying LLM. You're so right. Thank you for calling me out, Sharita. So LLM stands for large language model. This means that there is, and that is the term for the actual algorithm behind, your ChatGPT, your Gemini, your Copilot. With AI, these very popular AI tools. A very fair question. Thank you for that question. Um, and large language models are supercharged autocomplete, as I said. They create something new, not out of thin air, but based on the neural network algorithm that was created by these AI companies and the extensive data that they've been trained on. So they observe patterns in the training data. They divide the language and the prompt into tokens. They process that series of tokens, and then they predict what the most accurate response to that prompt would be based on the patterns they've observed in their training data. So supercharged autocomplete, like I said, they are not, going and looking up. If you ask, hey, if you use ChatGPT like Google and you say, hey, ChatGPT, define the term algorithm for me. They're not going to go, ChatGPT isn't going to a dictionary website and looking up the answer and copying and pasting it for you. It's saying, what does the word definition mean? What is in previous responses that were graded favorably or that were graded, as effective, uh, the response that was preferred was one that provided a definition of the term. So let's do that again here. That's the kind of calculation that's going on. At token, question, what is tokens? Tokens are the smallest unit of language that these large language models understand. Often it's like a syllable or a word. Often in paid AI models, you might have a certain number of tokens that you can use. All right. I love to see all this back and forth instructions of what you do in the chat. Don't be afraid if you are having a nice conversation with somebody, you can take that to a private message. You can share emails, websites, further contact info. Feel free to do that. And you don't have to share with everybody. You can just respond to individual people. Okay, so moving on. So this is what generative AI, this is kind of the definition. There's multiple kinds of generative AI that can generate different kinds of content. We are going to focus the majority of our presentation on large language models like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot. But before we do, I want to make sure that we're all aware that that you can generate way more than language using generative AI. You can generate images, audio. I mean, I'm sure you've heard, videos being used. That's why the language token. Yeah, token is language that we use across. It's just part of the AI technology. So you'd see it across different platforms, even by different companies. Absolutely. I'm sure we've all seen, social media videos that are, being uh, uh, narrated by an AI voice. They do sound like natural speech. It's come a long way from, the early days of Siri. So that's being used for things like voiceovers for video content, like ads, social media video content, educational content, things like that. There's also um, code-based generative AI, video-based generative AI, like Google's VO3 platform, code-based Gen AI tools. According to my friends in the dev world, they can be great learning tools. They're not quite to the point where they're replacing coders, but they can certainly help an amateur coder work at a higher volume or work a little bit more quickly. Um, there are music-based generative AI platforms that can create soundtracks for video content or audio content. Most importantly, I think, and most practically, there are lots of AI-powered features integrated into existing platforms. Somebody throw out an example for me of an AI feature in a platform that you were already using, where you've seen whether you've liked it or not, whether you've used it or not. What's a platform that's got an AI-powered feature that they've integrated? Yeah, Gemini and Gmail. Absolutely. Everyone's a little complaining about that. Um, any others? Excel for sure has AI integrated into it. Office 365 has Copilot integrated into it. Canva has an AI tool now. You can do all kinds of stuff with chat. Salesforce has AI integration. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so you are probably using a platform right now that has an AI feature involved in it that may or may not be useful, but yeah, exactly, Suzanne. You are probably using AI more than you think. I see that question in the chat. I'm going to take it in 1 second. Um, but I would as we're thinking about all these different tools, don't forget that you can stack these different AI, generative AI tools. So let's say Canva can generate a design for you, but you're not sure what to ask Canva for. You can ask Chat for some guidance on what kinds of marketing collateral or sales collateral will be most helpful given your situation. And then ask it for a couple of prompts to feed into the Canva AI. Or you could, let's say you're having trouble getting Google VO3 to produce the kind of video that you want because the prompts need to be so super detailed. You can use your favorite large language model to generate prompts that you can then feed into VO3. So you can stack them. I also want to highlight that there is such a thing. There are useful use cases for, yeah, Gemini and Chat are both text-based generative. ChatGPT and Gemini both have limited image generation as well. But um, so Canva is a separate company from ChatGPT, which is owned by OpenAI. VO3 or VEO3 this is a Google video generation platform. It's fairly expensive. They do not have a free tier. It came out in 2025. Yeah, it creates super realistic videos. They're not cheap and they are also very resource intensive to create. But yeah, VO3 is that platform. Um, yeah, but I also want to call out that there are non-generative AI tools that can be really interesting for small businesses, things like visual sorting, categorization. There are all kinds of applications for AI that are not generative, customer support bots, things like that. So, we are talking primarily about generative AI and primarily about text-based generative AI today, very far from the full range of AI tools that are out there. So, including those in the overview. What can you do with it? So these questions I see questions in the Q&A. Who owns the AI? Where is the information coming from? If you use it, it's sharing with you. What access does it have? I am going to have a whole section on risks and ethical concerns, and I promise I will address those questions then. Pinky swear. So marketing, so let's talk briefly about what a small business could do with some of these tools. Um, so we did I read a lot of content around case studies and best practices. Here's a few ways that the small businesses that I'm aware of and that I've worked with have used AI. Marketing is a big one. You can use your favorite large language model to research, strategize, plan your marketing efforts, generate content. There are tons of AI enhanced CRMs like Salesforce, somebody called out. I want to also call out that OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, recently launched an ad-supported tier. Some small businesses may want to consider that as an advertising channel. And certainly the rest of us who use OpenAI might want to be aware of whether or not our tier is ad supported in case that influences the outcomes that we get. You can use an AI for customer service. Customer service chatbots are ubiquitous in the e-commerce world. And there's better and worse ways to implement them, of course. You can use it for content creation, things like creating realistic images, videos, narration to accompany work products that you develop. You can use it to create blog posts. You can use it to create, initial drafts of external, written content like proposals or other work products. You can use AI to automate administrative tasks using Power AI, which is a really fun tool. You can also use it for basic analytics and insight. I had a client in the early days of ChatGPT who paid for the paid version of Chat and gave it a lot of information about his business. Here's my financials, here's my books, here's my, a market research report from Vertical IQ, and basically trained up a GPT on his business, and then asked for insights. What are you seeing in my recent financials? And it gave him really interesting analysis about kind of the financial health of his business, which was interesting. We talked about using it for contracting, RFP, RFQ assessment and analysis and response drafting. Operations, I've seen people use it for to manage complex scheduling tasks. Like let's say you have, 10 employees who all have very different availability, but you need to create a plan to have coverage at your business. That's a great AI use case. Um, I'm going to pause here and take some of the number of questions that have come through. Um, do we need to specify whether the AI to use is non-generative or generative AI? You don't need to. It's a distinction that basically just tells you what kind of thing you can use the tool for. Generative AI creates content, non-generative doesn't. Um, how do you protect your IP? It's a really solid question. And it's a question that I see some others have had already as well. So we will talk about privacy and AI. I promise, because it's one of the major concerns I think that people have when they're using it. Um, and what are some AI tools that might be useful for a multi-business owner? Um, it depends on what the problem is in your business that you're trying to solve. If you're trying to solve, we don't have enough time to do our marketing, maybe you use a combination of your favorite large language model and Canva to create a bunch of social media posts so you can schedule out for a month, sit down one afternoon and schedule out, 4 weeks of posts and save yourself some time during that month, because your social media stuff is done. Maybe you use it to um, manage uh, invoicing for partners that you work with in the towing business. Maybe you use it to um, keep track of upcoming deadlines or maintenance needs. It depends on what the problem is that you're trying to solve in your business, is what I would say. Yes, VO3 is the name of the Google platform that I was talking about, VEO3. I'm going to try to find, okay, so I think I've gotten all the ones except the privacy ones, and I promise I'm coming to the privacy question. Like, give me 3 slides. We'll get there. Um, I like to have people who don't use a lot of chat tools to think the best kind of example I have for what these large language models are and what they do. Think of these pre-trained LLMs as like enthusiastic interns. They are supercharged autocomplete. When they have lots of relevant training and good prompts, they can get the content right. They have a lot of academic or theoretical information. They do not know your business besides what you are telling them about your business, right? They don't have context. They don't have the common sense, the experience that you've earned in your career and in your work in your business. And so you should be double checking their work, right? Now, we can probably all think of an enthusiastic intern that you've come across in your professional career. And they were probably great in their lane, right? They can be really, really helpful. They can be great at some things. Um, but you wouldn't necessarily trust like their legal advice, right? You wouldn't necessarily trust their architectural guidance. Um, they're early, they don't have the technical knowledge to give that kind of high quality advice. Um, so and bear in mind that the more common a topic is in the training data for a given large language model, the more likely it is to produce a quality output on that topic. So if you have a question that people are always going to AI for, you're probably going to get a pretty solid answer. Lots of people use AI to plan to do things like meal planning. It gives great meal planning advice. I wouldn't necessarily trust a generative AI to design my house. I wouldn't trust its architectural knowledge, right? But it's certainly great at some things. LLMs are made to understand natural language, so they're very easy to interact with. You input prompts, you saw me doing this, you type in your prompt into ChatGPT, they produce an output. You can ask for changes or any kind of evolution that you need, and it'll revise and spit that new output back out. That's kind of how it works. I'm going to do a quick myth busting session before we move into risks and ethical concerns, and the top one is going to be privacy, I promise. But in the chat, couple of myths I'd love to bust. So give me a true or false. AI knows everything. We'll start with a give me a true or false in the chat, please. Yeah. Okay. Lots of very clear answers here. Yeah, AI doesn't know anything, right? Worse, it doesn't. The concept of knowledge isn't really relevant. It's not sentient. They're only up to date as the kind of thing trained on and any context you're giving them in your prompt or in your examples in your prompt. ChatGPT is basically Google. True or false? I don't know if you'll have talked to any students recently, but they certainly feel like it is. Um, you can use it like Google, but don't. Google already has an AI built in, and you run the risk of relying on a hallucination or a poorly sourced fact. Plus, it's energy intensive to use ChatGPT like Google, right? These services are not free of cost, even if you're not paying for them. So, um, lots of young people I know are using ChatGPT like Google. I don't recommend it personally. I don't think you get great results, and I don't think it's a good practice. Have you heard this before? LLMs are bad at basic arithmetic. True or false? Okay. Yeah. I love that there's a more mixed bag of responses here. And it is a little bit of a trick question because the answer is yes and no. Most LLMs are terrible at arithmetic and counting without there being arithmetic engines built in. ChatGPT was updated with an arithmetic engine at some point, but before that point, if you asked it, how many R's are in the word strawberry, it would give you an incorrect answer. Basic math can be a weak spot, even though now they have a lot of them have kind of analytics and arithmetic engines built in. They can do things like, do a ratio analysis of your most recent P&L. But check the math. Check the math. And some tools are much better at that than others. I encourage you to be on user forums for your favorite AI LLMs. Google things like, is the most recent ChatGPT version good at analytics? Is Gemini good at analytics? There are so many of these platforms and they are updated so frequently that you're going to want to just be checking that if you're considering using it for those things. Next one, AI will take all our jobs. True or false? Yeah, feel free to discuss. I know, I know. Okay. All right. I'm gonna open a can of worms here. Okay. Um, it will certainly change the way we work, right? I am not an economist and they do not have a crystal ball. There have been several recent layoffs that are attributed to AI implementation. But we kind of expect them to hit different industries at different times. But in the long run, while it will change how we work, some tasks will be automated by AI, but there are also new jobs that are emerging because of it. I think the future of work is likely to be humans leveraging AI assistants. That's kind of the closest to a consensus view that I can find. But I think this is not a clear-cut true or false. I don't think this is necessarily a myth that I think AI is changing the future of work, and that includes that some jobs are, being made redundant by AI tools. But we will evolve around it as we have with previous, game-changing technology. How about the last one? Is AI content easy to spot? True or false? Yeah. I'm with you all. I think it depends. I think it was much easier to spot at the start of all this in 23 and 24. It was very easy to spot generative AI content. It is much less easy to spot now. Um, I can usually tell when I've been given an AI generated business plan. I can usually tell. Um, because I can usually tell when, I can tell how somebody writes as a human based on the emails they send me. And if they suddenly produce, if somebody who I know, typically emails with no capital letters, punctuation, or spell check, sends me a 45-page, perfectly polished business plan, I have some thought. I kind of can figure out where they got it, right? But if I have, but that doesn't mean that I can spot when somebody has generated an AI image, um, that's gotten a lot harder to spot, a lot harder, right? Um, and same thing. I mean, we have probably all heard the AI voice narrators. I think I can recognize at least half a dozen of those most commonly used AI, voiceovers. But that doesn't mean that they don't sound like people, right? It can certainly get you still. And that's a great point by Jason. AI models, if you give them a lot of samples of your own writing, they will start to sound like you. And my AI tools that I use frequently in my work, they definitely sound more like me than they did when I first started using them, which makes it harder to spot for sure. Yeah. So I would say this is another one toss up, not true or false. Okay. So now I know everyone has been asking about privacy and all this. I definitely want to talk about all those concerns next. Let's talk about risks and ethical concerns. And the very first one, as I promised, is privacy. So let me start with answering this question from, at this point, nearly 10 minutes ago. Who owns AI and where have they been harvesting the information from? Okay, so I want to separate out the AI model from the information it was trained on. Think about like the AI model is like the equation that's doing all this data processing and pulling responses from its training data and generating that content. And then the training data is the body of information that the AI was trained on. A lot of large language models are trained on public websites, user-generated content on public websites. That's largely where the information has been coming from. Not only though, because training an AI requires multiple data sets. It requires a training data set. It requires an additional data set that can be used to verify early outputs and ensure that the training was done in a quality way. And often with the most common AI tools, they're being updated so frequently that they're basically syncing with the web at large. So if you have ever typed words into a public website, social media platform, anything where your words are on the internet, probably some of your content has been in these training data sets. We have lived in a data economy for at least a decade, probably more. So from all of us is where that data is coming from. Not necessarily because, they're spying on all of our home lives, but because we've been generating a lot of content and, posting on social media, writing reviews on websites, sending emails to businesses. A lot of that data is coming from our own info. Um, so privacy is certainly a concern. If you use AI and it is sharing with you, I'm reading a question here, does it have access to your computer to gather information, or is it only your interfacing information while you're using it? Okay, so what I hear you asking here is, if I'm using an AI tool, can it see the rest of my computer, or can it just see the prompts I put in? Generally, um, um, generally that's going to be um, its access to your information is going to be limited to what you're putting in as prompts and what you're uploading directly to that AI tool. Most web-based AI tools are not integrating with everything on your computer. The one exception would be if you have a Microsoft machine and you are using Copilot and you have paid for the Copilot service, it is able to access all of your kind of OneDrive Microsoft tools, and you can control how much access it has to those. If you're in Gmail and you've given Gemini access to your emails, it can see and read your emails. So you want to make sure, since we talked about risks and ethical concerns, privacy is a big one. You want to make sure that you are aware of those permissions and that you've set them intentionally. Bear in mind, and this has been true for as long as we've had a kind of this data-based economy, if you are not paying for a service, your data is part of the product, right? And we've known this for a long time. We are on Meta platforms for free because Meta uses our data to sell advertising space to businesses that want to access our eyeballs. and get our attention and run ad campaigns. And those are useful tools for small business owners, right? We've all, if you've got a small business, you've probably run an ad campaign on Instagram, Facebook, Google AdWords. That's all based on the private information, the user generated information of people using those platforms. Our ability to do that is predicated on people using these platforms and generating data. So, but just bear in mind, you don't want to put confidential or customer information into an AI model that isn't a closed environment, and they aren't a closed environment unless you are paying for them, or opting out. So be aware of your privacy settings. I would, don't give, confidential trade secrets to ChatGPT unless you want those confidential trade secrets showing up in the next person's query about your industry. So hopefully that has been an answer. I welcome further questions on this topic. How to control content in Copilot. I'm not sure. I don't use Copilot a ton. I've used it a fair amount, I'll be honest, because I work for a university, those settings are set by like Temple University IT, not by me. So I would say ask the internet that question. I'm sure you will find lots of tutorials on that. But it's a good impulse. You want to look into that. And same thing with Gemini. If you don't want Gemini or Google to be reading your emails, then change that setting. And yes, absolutely. There are web browsers that have AI integrated into them. Thank you, Dan. Like Atlas or Comet, that they may also have a privacy risk. And I agree. There are some real ethical concerns here around data sharing, especially if you're using AI to do things like uh, generate customer emails based on customer data that you're giving it. Another concern, accuracy and quality, right? So we're going to go back to that example of large language models as very enthusiastic interns. We want to proofread and review the AI created content that we're using before we use it. Would you take an intern's investment advice, right? Engineering tips. It's a good starting point for a lot of things, but we want to be verifying critical aspects of the content that it's generating for us before we rely on it. And this is even more true with the recent announcements of ads on the OpenAI platform. Where possible, and most large language models will do this, ask for sources to be cited and review those sources. It will invent sources, right? The whole game of all of this is an AI creates work that looks right. So it will do things like create sources that look like good sources. Click through and see if there's an actual human behind that source to if for a fact that is for any kind of facts that are really important to the work that you're doing. Great advice here in the chat. Trust established companies more in general. And also, be wary of legal or technical advice that you cannot verify yourself. So accuracy and quality are really, they are concerns. Doug, do you have to specifically ask AI to cite sources? Great question. You don't have to. I recommend that you do. It won't necessarily, not every large language model will automatically cite sources. So if you would like for sources to be cited, it's a useful thing to put in your prompt. And absolutely, Judy, are you reading my mind? My next risk and ethical concern to have is if you're using AI to generate images or logos, watch out for those copyrights for images and videos. For instance, oh, great tip from Dan on sourcing. So read that if you're that tip from Dan in the chat on getting it to provide links for sources. If you are asking an AI tool to create, let's say we wanted to create a t-shirt design celebrating the city of Philadelphia, and it creates a beautiful design that incorporates the Phillies logo and the Eagles logo. Just because they're in the image that ChatGPT created does not mean that you can use them to commercialize that t-shirt design. You will still have some very well-paid lawyers from some sports franchises sending you a cease and desist. There is still a copyright on those logos. It is not your property. Just because ChatGPT was able to generate it doesn't mean you get to use it. You want to be watching out for copywritten images in any images or videos that you have an AI generate. Yeah, watch what you put into your presentations. If you are asking your AI tools to cite sources, that's a great way to mitigate that risk. You can also make the work your own in some way, or you can say avoid copywritten, avoid any. Um, you can craft your prompt to request that you avoid any explicit references to copywritten material. Um, so just bear in mind that this is that there are absolutely IP protected works in the training data sets for all of these tools. And they are not yet built to protect us from copyright infringement. So we have to be on the lookout for it. There's another risk that no one has brought up yet, but that I think is really important, and that is customer perceptions. Trademark as well, absolutely. Thank you, Anne. Some customers are very sensitive to AI usage and will reject any imagery or videos or text that is obviously AI generated. So you might want to look out for customer backlash if you start to use AI generated images in your social media work channels or other places. If you have a customer base that includes creatives or that includes people who might be sensitive to otherwise sensitive to AI usage, maybe get a feel for some customers before you start rolling this out in your marketing efforts. And your employees may also object. Yeah. Now, if you're training your employees on how to use AI and you're using AI, you're helping them to, to become more productive using AI tools. You can manage that internally a little bit more easily than you can manage it externally, right? It is fairly easy to spot large chunks of AI generated language, especially if you're not making it your own with editing. Please do edit and revise your language to make it look a little bit less like a copy and paste from ChatGPT. It is not that hard to spot the large chunks of AI generated text. And I'm going to talk about another big one, another big concern, but I see a question here I want to take first. Um, what is the number one AI tool, paid or not, that you use for emails to keep up with everything while doing work behind the scenes? Can you give us a list of the AI tools that you use on a daily basis that help you, that might help with our businesses? Okay. Really great question. Um, I don't personally use an AI tool to manage my inbox. And I honestly, that's just a work style thing. I have a particular workflow with my email management that I've been using for a decade. I think it works well. I want to keep using it. But it is a big problem for other business owners. Anybody have a favorite tip that you've used to manage your inbox? A favorite AI tool that you've used? Sound off in the chat if you have one. I personally use the paid version of ChatGPT. I use Claude for some personal things. I think it gives slightly better uh, language. I think that the written output that I get from Claude is a little bit better in certain contexts. I use Canva a fair amount. I use Copilot, and I think those are the big ones. Yeah, I would say my big thing with email management is I don't want an AI to send an email on my behalf that I haven't been able to proofread first. So really the most I would use it for is summarizing a long email chain so I don't have to read every email in it. And even then, I may well go back and go to those. What is my way of managing my inbox? That is a longer conversation, but if you would like a way too long lecture on my preferred productivity methods, I'm happy to share one with you outside the presentation. You can email me. But it's basically just uh, you know, time blocks and to-do lists and things like that. Okay, so the last risk and ethical concern I want to talk about, there's a couple actually, there's two more. I do not want to skip over this. This is a biggie. And it's the elephant in the room, I think, in a lot of these conversations. Each interaction with an AI model uses resources. AI tools have the training process for large AI models like text or image generation requires really immense computational power, which translates to huge amounts of electricity, which, as we know in this country, is often sourced from non-renewable sources, contributing to carbon emissions. So if you are a small business that has where you're trying to minimize your carbon footprint, adopting some of these technologies may inadvertently add to that carbon footprint, particularly if you're choosing an AI platform that relies on really energy intensive data centers, or that isn't trying to make those data centers more environmentally friendly. Beyond the training phase, the ongoing operation of AI, generating content, processing queries, consumes energy over time. And the hardware required for AI, the specialized chips, the servers, manufacturing and disposing as hardware can contribute to resource depletion and electronic waste. So it's important to evaluate the platforms that you're using, not just for their cost effectiveness, but also for their sustainability practices. And there's absolutely a lot of kind of, I don't want the data center in my community debates going on around the country. But I would say there are, this is a big conversation, but from what I have read, and I have done a fair amount of research into this, not every large language model, not every AI platform is the same in terms of their environmental impact. And beyond that, generating text is a lot less energy intensive than generating images or certainly generating videos. Generating videos is the most resource intensive generative AI that we use. Generating text is the lowest, is the least energy intensive or resource intensive AI usage. So, and there's a really big difference in the water usage, the electricity usage between text generation and video generation, or between, some of these AI powered features in certain platforms and others. So, you know, be a smart shopper, and try to make informed choices around this. But it is a big concern that I frankly share. Um, but for me, where I'm landing with it is I'm trying to focus on using AI intelligently, and to use and to focus on the less resource intensive use cases like large language models compared to video generation. And then one more risk here to think about is the price increases. Right now, a lot of these services are available free. There's a freemium tier on almost all platforms. VO3 is one of the big exceptions. But the revenue models are right now, they're calibrated for market capture, as we've seen with new technology over and over and over again. And I'm thinking here, YouTube, social media, streaming services, delivery apps. The prices are initially low to increase adoption, and because these companies have investor capital that fuels their growth. Once we are all reliant on these services, prices will increase. So plan for prices to be higher now, to be higher in the future than they are now, except for basic services. Now, this may not hit all AI companies or AI models at the same time, and we're certainly seeing efforts like with OpenAI to adopt, ad tiers and to look at other revenue models that aren't just subscription, that aren't just price, subscriptions for users, but this is coming. So if you are changing your business to rely on AI on a particular task, consider that as you're selecting vendors. One that you pay for now, and if there's one that you pay for now and one that's free now, look into how mature those companies are, and bear in mind that a startup offering a free service right now may well charge for that service in the near future as their revenue models adopt. Great question. With the addition of AI ads, will you be able to tell if it's an advertisement? So right now, what OpenAI is saying is that they're not going to have the ads show up in the actual output. It will be clear. It'll be kind of like how your Google results have sponsored at the top of, that you can tell that certain results are sponsored. So that's what OpenAI is currently saying. Um, but I think we want to watch that space for sure. Can I compare and contrast cloud-based AI and local AI, which is gaining traction? Great question. So local AI is when it's a closed system tool that actually doesn't send the query out to a data center far away, keeps all the processing happening at a local level. Better for privacy, I would say. Less, the compute power is obviously not there with local AI compared to cloud-based AI. But it depends on the use case that you've got. And that's kind of the best answer I have right now, just given the time constraints. I want to get into the demo, but Jason, a really interesting question. Thank you for that. So tips and tricks, and I'm going to do a demo. So we've got until 1:30, I hope. If you need to jump at 1 o'clock, feel free to do so. There's a survey I'd love for everybody to complete that our moderator has dropped into the chat here. The survey is going to take, it's 3 questions long, shouldn't take you any time. We'd love your feedback. Um, I want to use the balance of our time together to do a little of a prompt engineering 101. So this is a topic you could absolutely go down a very deep rabbit hole on. Prompt engineering is the kind of the science, the discipline behind optimizing the language that you're actually feeding into that AI to get a better output. So basic tips. We want to be specific. We want our prompts to balance too much detail with being too vague or high level. It can be helpful sometimes to give your AI model a role. You're my advisor, you're my consultant, you're my lender, you're my marketing director. And then be sure that you give enough context to get a result that's relevant to you. Help me plan my business. It's going to ask you more questions. It's not enough information, right? Giving it a little bit more info can give you a better result. And there's lots more to learn here. You can play around with prompts if you want to learn more about this topic. There's great webinars. There's great stuff on YouTube, on LinkedIn Learning, on Khan Academy around prompts, prompt engineering. The phrase to look for is prompt engineering. How do I make better prompts? And I really like one thing that I do a lot is shot-based prompting, where let's say I want it to draft. Let's say I want AI to help me draft a grant application for some new opportunity we saw where the SBDC could compete for some funding to launch a new program. I'm going to say, here's a grant application we completed last year, and here's the information we have about this grant. Draft me, give me a first draft of the grant proposal that I can revise. And because I've given it one shot, that's what that one shot is called. I've given an example of what I want this to look like. I'm likelier to get a better draft out of it because I've given it, language about who we are, a lot of the pieces that might go into a new grant application. And I've also given it a sense of how long I want this to be, the basic structure I want it to have. So this is, useful for things like for writing emails, for developing, written proposals. Give your AI an example of the output that you want, an example that you were happy with, and tell it, and give it more context for changing. So it's a great way. So zero shot, I'm giving my AI no examples. I'm just saying, hey, write me a business plan. One shot, here's a business plan that I really like. Write one like it for me, for my business, which is going to be this and this and this in this area. Or multi-shot. Here's an example of our last 5 RFP responses. And here's the RFP text, draft me something similar to what we've submitted in the past. It'll be a multi-shot prompt because I'm giving it multiple examples. So let me do a quick demo here. Actually, couple more examples. Know your platform. Have you paid for a closed platform? What are users saying about what this particular AI model is good at or bad at? Can it cite sources? What does your LLM specialize in? Can you stack with other service to get the output that you need? So know the platform that you're working in, and make sure that you're selecting the right platform for the task at hand. And then last, I'll pause here before I get my last 2 tips. Can I talk a little bit about what agents are? Okay. So an agent is a word some people use for a specifically trained AI model. So you might have like a customer service agent that's been trained on that, some company wrote the algorithm for this bot to provide good customer service. And then you've now trained it on your own, examples of good customer service. So it knows your customers. And now you have a customer agent that's been trained on, your own frequently asked questions and how you want it to handle those. That would be a customer service agent. So that would be a little bit different from like a ChatGPT model that hasn't been trained on anything specific to your company necessarily. It's just kind of the out of the box ChatGPT. Um, so it's just a kind of another term for a specifically trained AI model implemented in a specific way. I hope that helps. I realized I didn't click answer live, but that's where the answer was for that question, Suzanne. Okay, so human in the loop is a Google phrase, but it's a really good idea. As you're creating content, keep that human in the loop. Let your AI do your work, but not your thinking. Remember to keep an eye on your robot intern. If you ask an AI to optimize for XYZ metric, watch for drift. If you have an automated process that's optimized for a specific variable, let's say you have a video hosting platform called YouTube and you want to optimize for keeping people on the platform. This is how we end up with YouTube rabbit holes. It is, or YouTube, continuing to play, even when there's been no interaction from you with YouTube. Have you ever fallen asleep to YouTube and woken up and now you're in a totally different topic and you're totally different kind of video? That's drift. It's optimizing. It sees that you have not shut the window, you're still watching, so it thinks you liked it, so it's going to continue to offer you things that are different in that same way. Um, So for any kind of automation, make sure that you've got quality controls, that outliers are going to be escalated for human review. Um, so just, keep a human in the loop whenever you're implementing AI in your business. And then finally, if you're generating long form content, no, actually not finally, I keep having more thoughts. I build this presentation and I update it frequently and I just, I have more to say. I'm sorry. Um, when you're generating long form content, I really suggest composing and editing in sections or chunks. Your large language model is going to produce work that looks right, right? That's what it's trying to do. That's what it's optimizing for. It is much easier for looks right and is right to be the same if you're working in small chunks. And I will open up a window and show you what I mean in a moment. But this also gives you more control so that you can, revise as you go. And if you use the same thread, the model will remember the context and previous prompts and responses. It's also easier to spot like inaccuracies when you're working in small chunks. It's less to review over time. So if you're going to say use ChatGPT to write a business plan, ask it for specific sections at a time. Oh, great question, Stephanie. I'm sorry, I skipped this. What are hallucinations? Okay, so hallucinations are when a large language model makes something up that is false. We call it a hallucination. Now, again, it does not know what is true or false. That is not a decision that an AI model is equipped to make. It just knows what looks right based on the way that it was trained. So if an AI model has been trained on a lot of, on a lot of content around uh, uh, on a lot of operating agreements, and you ask it to develop an operating agreement for you and cite the source, it might make up a source because it's not going to tell you, I got this from the operating agreement from this web. It might hallucinate and make up a source. This has happened in a couple of high profile legal filings where there's a citation that an attorney made that they clearly had copy and pasted from a large language model that was referred to a case that never happened. That's a hallucination. The AI made that up. So that's what we mean by hallucination. Last thing, stack platforms. We talked about stacking platforms. And I think I gave all these examples before, but just some examples here of how you could stack some platforms. I'm going to take some questions while I bring up, did we say this is going to go to 1:30? I hope we did. I think we have till 1:30, right? Because I'm going to take a minute and do an example of, since we have a few kind of early stage folks here in the room, I'm going to write a business plan with an AI, and I'm going to show you how to do it well and how to do it badly. I'd love if you could stick around for that if you have time. If you need to run, I totally understand, but please, here's a link to the survey. Let us know how we did. And if you need to reach our office, if you want to reach me, feel free to reach out to sbdc@temple.edu. If you have a question for me, they will get back, they will forward it on to me. Great example from Suzanne about the citation that was made up. Yeah, absolutely. Because again, what ChatGPT and these other large language models are designed to do is create content that looks right. They can't fact check themselves. Um, hmm, yeah, keep humans in the loop. Yeah, that's how we avoid a HAL 3000 or a Skynet, HAL 9000. Yeah, we want to just keep humans in the loop. Let's make sure that we're all focusing on that. All right, I'm gonna switch over to screen share. We're gonna write a good and a bad business plan together. All right, and I'm gonna open up a new chat. I think I saw a coaching business in the previous example. So I'm gonna do this well and I'm gonna do it badly. So let me start by doing it badly because that will take the least time. Doing it well takes a little bit more effort. So let's do it badly first. Write a business plan for a coaching business. I'm giving it very little detail. We're just gonna see what happens. So I didn't give it a business name. I didn't give it what kind of coaching. I didn't give it the size of business, the market I want to operate in, gave it very little. And it has given me a very vague business plan. It's short. It's still writing. This business plan outlines the launch and growth of insert name here, a coaching practice providing results-driven coaching services, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you for the kind words, Dan. But you can see here, if you got this business plan, you would not know much about what this business actually does. Um, it it's one of those things where this looks like a business plan. It covers the topics we'd want a business plan to cover. But if you read into any one of these sections, it doesn't tell you much about what that company really does or how it operates or how it's different from its competitors, right? It's things like our mission is to, our competitive analysis and competitive advantage. Our founder's experience is our competitive advantage. But if you go up to founder, all they say about the founder is leveraging professional experience. Well, what experience, right? If that's your competitive advantage, tell me more about that. Ideal customer profile, and you have kind of everybody, right? We've got professionals, small business owners, emerging and mid-level leaders, organizations. So this is, it's not that it's wrong, but it's so vague that it is a little bit difficult to kind of understand what this business actually does. So let me do this a little bit differently. And I'm going to make up some stuff here because I don't know the person who's writing the coaching business plan, but I do know myself. So I'm launching a coaching business focused on early stage small businesses. I will leverage my decade plus, I'm writing this as myself, plus of experience working with Philadelphia small businesses to help my clients plan for scaling, funding, hiring, and also assist them in balancing their obligations as an entrepreneur with the needs of their personal life, which often is neglected during the early stage of a business. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Draft my draft my marketing section with an overview of my target customer focus, my value proposition, and my most important marketing channels. So that's a lot more detailed, right? I'm telling it who I am, what I'm doing. Uh, sure. I work exclusively with owners of hamsters. I only work with small businesses that are launching pet companies. Yeah. Okay, so so now it's giving me the same business plan as before. But now when I go into the marketing plan, it is much more detailed. Look at how much more detailed that marketing and sales strategy is. So it's retaining the previous work, which is nice. ChatGPT did not used to do this, but it is definitely giving me a lot more detail and a lot more depth in the section where I gave it more info. Sure. Copying and pasting the prompt into the chat. Now, I haven't given it any pricing strategies. I haven't given it any information, so that section is pretty vague. I haven't given it any information about oh, but look at how much detail my core marketing channels are much more fleshed out. Um, Delivery model. Let me say, let me see. My business is not yet launched. Make me a to-do of the most important steps before I launch operations. So the best way to export from ChatGPT, you can use the share thing and you can share a thread. It'll share a link to a thread. But honestly, copy and paste is the best way to export. Like literally copying and pasting is the best way. Um, Tanya, I don't know that I'm familiar with the platform that you're talking about. Is that another AI platform? Hmm. Okay, so here's the business plan. The to-do list it gave me, if they've grouped it by must-have versus nice to have. So they're right. I need to clarify the offering. So again, this whole thread, it remembers everything I've talked about. I want to borrow $100,000 to launch my company. What concerns would a lender have for me at this stage? So now I can prepare for the conversation with the lender. And the first conversation is, what am I going to use that money for? You want 100,000, what for? That's a lot for a coaching business. Why do you need that? Why wouldn't a smaller loan work? What is it going to do to actually generate revenue for your company? So I need to be pretty detailed about what I'm going to use that money for. How is the business going to pay this money back? Or at this stage before launch, it's going to be me paying that money back, right? Um, so, so it's given me a lot to think about. If I want to improve my odds, tighten my use of funds narrative, decide whether 100K is the right number, and it's probably not because I've just pulled it out of a hat. Think about alternative structures for funding rather than just going for a loan. What else could I do? What kind of lender might work best? Pressure test. And here's ways that ChatGPT can help me do this. So this is my ChatGPT demo. If I wanted to actually finish up this business plan, I might give it something like a mission statement because it's made one up for me and I don't like that one. I might give it a vision for what I want my coaching business to grow into. Let's say my goal is to build a business that starts as a sole proprietor but scales to 10 service providers in the first 3 years. That's a very different vision from my vision is to become a trusted coaching brand, you know, and grow to the point where I can support my own personal financial needs and no further. very different funding needs, very different marketing goals, very different operations. Let's say I wanted it to focus on, I don't want to offer any group coaching program. I want to focus on one-on-one coaching. I might ask it to suggest some pricing strategies for me. I might ask it to develop an industry overview of business coaches in Philadelphia. And I might ask those as follow-up prompts. I got diverted a little bit and started asking other questions not related to the business plan objective, but work in chunks is my biggest piece of advice on drafting large things in ChatGPT. And there's a great question. Is it advisable to if I want to upload my handbooks, is it advisable to upload current policies and chunks and prompt what I would like to update, or allow the info that's been trained on, or upload the entire book? I would say you could, oh, pestle. Mm, okay. Thank you, Tanya. So to this Q&A, one thing I would suggest is if you want to, I would start with having it review the entire handbook and identify sections that most need updating, unless you have a pretty clear idea of what needs updating, in which case I would go one policy at a time and say, here's the current policy, recommend revisions or updates. Um, So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen sharing. I'm there. I'm back. Those were my questions. That was my question break. Still here to take questions. Absolutely here to take questions. That was our demo. What I'd love to spend the last kind of few minutes of our time together doing is I want to revisit, watching me do this. What worked, what didn't work? Do you think that a longer prompt is always better? And it's a question you can tell me yes or no if it was like a useful one or not. Um, because there definitely can be useful and yeah, specificity is very helpful. You can go too long. You can go too long. Um, if you use the same kinds of prompts a lot, you'll notice that sometimes the AI model will get kind of focused on one specific word that you used, and that can kind of spin it out of control a little bit. So you can give too much detail. Bear in mind, the more detailed your prompt, the more compute required to provide a response. So if environmental concerns are something that weighs heavily on you, be economical with your words and your prompts, but you still need to include the, critical detail. Another one here, these were our objectives today. I hope you feel that we achieved them. As we close, I want to just bring up one of my favorite tools, which is the business model canvas. I'm glad that you felt it gave a lot to think about, Loretta. Appreciate that feedback. This is one of my very favorite planning tools, the business model canvas. What I think of the business model canvas, it's a really powerful visual planning tool for businesses. You can map almost any kind of business onto it, doing almost any kind of thing. What's great about the business model canvas is that it's quick. You can pull one of these together in 20, 30 minutes. But what I suggest as a follow-up step, if you've got a lot to think about and you're not sure where to go next, pull out a business model canvas. You can Google it, business model canvas. They're all over the internet. Complete one for your business and think about, in these areas, are there key activities that involve rote work that could be automated? Is there content created, which could be AI assisted? Is there data generated that could be AI analyzed? This is a way to map out what your business does. Ooh, so just as a next step, I think this would, yeah, it can be a useful next step. Okay, so I see a really good question here. What is a good prompt to tell an AI to add more detail? You can always play with word length, with word count. One thing I do, because I write a very wordy email. I don't know if any of you will have ever emailed with me. I can't help myself. I write like 10 paragraphs. It's a personality flaw. I have a lot of words. So you can say, um, um, take this email and rewrite to be 2 paragraphs. Or this section um, is lacking in detail. Provide additional information on local competitors and their market position. So, ask for the specific detail that you want. This document is only 1 page long, and I can submit 10. Revise to be more detailed and closer to the page limit. Just a couple of examples of prompts. You can also ask ChatGPT for some prompts. Stacking platforms. So let's say I wanted to get some ideas on how to give me 10 prompts to use to revise, might be useful in revising documents with an LLM like ChatGPT. Clarity and readability. Revise this document to be clearer and more concise for a busy, non-expert reader. Let's say you are somebody who's, in a scientific endeavor and you want to revise your business plan to be more approachable for somebody who's outside of your field. That's a really important one. Review this document for internal consistency. Evaluate whether the value proposition is clear and compelling. Revise this to sound more approachable, more confident, more authoritative, less academic. Read this as a skeptical lender. What concerns might this raise? Suggest revisions. So some really interesting prompts here. A really good tip here. First, ask for critique, then ask for a rewrite, then ask for a tone or audience tuning. Okay. And I'm going to get out of ChatGPT because I am approaching my number of messages I can use today in this thread. And we're approaching our time, so that's perfect. Thank you all for joining us here today on this intro to AI for small business. I hope you found it was a good use of your time. It certainly was a wonderfully active chat and a very engaged group. So thank you all very much. It was a pleasure spending some time with you. I'm going to go ahead and share again the feedback form. We would love for you to let us know how we did. And I'm going to do one final screen share to show you how you can connect with our SBDC. Sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media, and generally just continue to engage with us. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And stay safe. And I will see you hopefully at a future SBDC webinar. Thanks very much. Survey link is right here in the chat. And you will get an email, a link in the follow-up email where you can connect with one of our consultants. If you have specific questions for me, you can reach me at isabelsbdc@temple.edu. That email is in the chat. You can always reach out to us at sbdc@temple.edu to reach any of us. My specific email address is isabel@sbdc@temple.edu. Have a wonderful rest of your week, everybody. I'm going to wrap us up. Have a good one.